Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our lunchtime series, Healthy Minds and Thriving Workplaces. Today, we're going to be talking about building a supportive workplace culture. For those who have joined us before, thank you for coming back. And for those who have not previously participated in one of our webinars, thank you for joining us today. And everything that we'll be discussing today with regards to the content, the slides, will be sent through to you after the workshop. So you don't need to make copious amounts of notes, so feel free to just sit back and absorb and listen. We'll also have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the day. So we'll do some introductions to start with. So before we do introductions, give you a bit of an agenda. We're going to be talking through the business case. So the significance of creating a supportive work culture for employee wellbeing and organisational success. So we'll talk about the benefits and then we'll move into the key factors. So what are those keys in terms of a supportive work culture, including communication, how we can help our leaders to be more empathic, and how to have leaders for them to have authentic leadership. Then we'll move into some best practices. So we'll give you some insights in relation to some of the evidence-based practices and initiatives that you can take on board as of today to help to contribute to a successful cultural change. As always, we'll have time for some Q&A at the end. So feel free, you can pop your questions into the chat box as we are presenting today, or if not, you can just hold those questions for the end of the Q&A. So just some brief introductions to start with. I'm Dr. Simone Shaw. Hello, everybody. There are some familiar names and faces there, so nice to see some of those familiar people. So I'm a clinical psychologist and clinical neuropsychologist. I did all my training, fortunate enough, in Brisbane within all of the tertiary hospitals, PA, QE2, Royal Brisbane, etc. And then I moved into private practice. Early on in my career, I was a rehabilitation coordinator, and that was for long-tail psychiatric claims or for dual diagnoses, physical and comorbid psychiatric conditions. I've also, early on in my career, I was an EAP counsellor. And then over time, I moved into the medico-legal field. And so within that space, I conduct predominantly independent medical examinations, either for psychological or neurological conditions. And that could be for fitness for work, or it could be related to compensation purposes. Currently, my practice specialises in IMEs, but also executive coaching. I'm really passionate about executive coaching and working in that preventative space, and to deliver training to help prevent people from getting unwell. And if we can create healthy workers and healthy workplaces, then that's fantastic. So I'm just going to throw over to Miriam to let her introduce herself to you now, and then give you a little bit of introduction to Leading Wellness Solutions.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Simone. Hi, everybody, and big welcome to everyone who is joining us today live, and also for those who are watching on the recording too. So my name is Miriam Henke. I have been working as a coach for over 15 years, specialising with leadership and executive coaching. And for the last 10, 11 years, I have been a registered psychologist. I'm an endorsed health psychologist, which may be a specialisation you may not have heard before, but I have additional training and understanding physical health conditions as well as mental health and treating both. I work with a lot of clients in private practice. I assess, diagnose, and treat across a broad range of psychological conditions. And I also do a lot of return to work compensation scheme claims as well. I do lots of training. I love educating and teaching. And so a lot of my focus has been on corporate workshops, particularly in the areas of mental health, literacy, helping leaders understand how to have conversations with their staff around mental health conditions, and also specific leadership training to help improve our core skills and build into more authentic and effective leadership styles. I have a particular interest in mind-body medicine. I love this interaction between the mind and the body, and what we can do with that deliberately. And I created something called the Mainspring Method a few years ago, which is a modality that allows the integration of mind-body medicine technologies into existing health practices. Plus, I'm also the founder of Quantum Retreats, running wellness retreats here in Australia and overseas as well. I am the co-founder and director of Lifespan Dynamics, quite entrepreneurial, and I founded this a few years ago with my partner, Michael. We distribute a range of medical and wellness devices using a technology called photobiomodulation or red light therapy, which you may or may not have heard of before, but we support a range of health practitioners with devices they use in clinic and also devices that can be used in the home as well. I hold the title of Senior Clinical Lecturer at the University of Adelaide. I've had a long-term relationship there. Adelaide is where I'm originally from. And I've also been the psychology lecturer for the Australian Chiropractic College. So we've got a lot of diverse range of experiences and knowledge that Simone and I share. And so I'll let her introduce Leading Wellness Solutions to you. Thanks, Simone.
Thanks, Miriam. So Miriam and I have been working in our own private practices for a long time, and fortunate we're able to meet, and we launched this wonderful organisation called Leading Wellness Solutions with our primary goal to actualise transformational change and accelerate the growth and development of individuals and organisations. Working in that reactive space a lot, we really wanted to focus our efforts in the preventative space so that we could work with leaders and teams to promote sustainable wellness solutions within organisations. We offer a range of different programs, both for leaders and employees, to help to increase mental health literacy, to help improve personal resilience, to assist with some of those soft skills like communication skills development, and also fundamentally for all employees to have personal leadership, to have personal accountability for their own wellbeing. And we have other additional services as well, whether it be IMEs, whether it be executive coaching, leadership retreats, EAP services, etc. Miriam is going to be presenting today. I'll be the host. And I will then rejoin you again when we move into our Q&A section at the end. So I'll hand over to Miriam to talk about creating a supportive workplace culture.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Simone. And look, for those of you who weren't able to join us at last month's webinar, we do have our recording of Understanding Psychosocial Hazards, which is some excellent fundamentals for working in leadership or the HR space. And wherever you're at in your own journey and your own professional space at the moment, we hope that today will give you either some reassurance that you're on the right track, some insights into some new things that you may not have heard of before that you may like to try. And we would certainly encourage you to get in touch with us either in the Q&A or after if there's anything that we've touched on today that you would like to explore more with us. So let's talk about the business case. You know, what's the significance of a supportive work culture, you know, employee wellbeing, and what does that connect to in terms of the organization's success? Well, to begin that, we have to understand what psychological safety is. This is something that's getting a lot of attention. You've probably heard of it before, but essentially it is a belief that a person will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with whatever it is that may be important, ideas, questions, concerns, to be able to acknowledge that they've made a mistake and have a sense that the team is a safe place for them, for their interpersonal risk-taking. So within that, the organisation has the responsibility to create an environment where they uphold employee wellbeing and to really live that, walk the talk really, as being genuinely important and supported. There's a very strong intimate relationship between psychological safety and a supportive work culture. And so this is the reason why we're here having this conversation today. It promotes a healthy two-way communication and strong relationships that serve all levels of the organisation, where trust is at the core of workplace relationships. And in these types of conditions, employees thrive. Not taking action is an act. So the price of an action of not prioritising a healthy and supportive workplace culture can mean all sorts of issues can emerge. We can start to see passive-aggressive behaviours coming out. When people are not feeling satisfied, heard or supported, there's all sorts of ways that they come out and show that. And unfortunately, that can create more problems. We see escalations of distress that can be a toll on an individual's mental health and where that may show up in the workplace. And we can see outbursts such as anger. If you're a leader, then you'll know that when there is stuff going on with your staff, it takes time to manage these issues. So from a leadership perspective, HR perspective, there's increased time to manage these issues. Performance concerns can certainly come in, and you've got to manage that too. Absenteeism, which of course takes away your FTE and creates additional pressures for the rest of your workforce. More complaints. Hello, more time invested into trying to deal with this situation. And of course, there can be negative impacts that flow on to the individual's personal health, mental and physical health. So we know that choosing not to act is an act. And because it flows over into their personal life, there can be other effects that we may not necessarily be privy to, but can certainly be something that workplace has a responsibility for. So I'm curious to get some ideas from you guys, and I'll get Simone to manage the chat. I would love to know from you what you think a supportive work culture is. How would you define it? What words would you use? We'd love to get any ideas from you guys. So please feel welcome to throw in your chat, whatever you think a supportive work culture is.
Thanks, Bethany. Open communication that goes two ways between the employee and management. Thanks, Monique. An environment where my team look forward to being in, absolutely. And they love coming to work and enjoy being there. Thank you, Talia. Where concerns are followed up. So it's so important as a leader that when you receive any type of feedback that you do something with that. I did some work with an organisation, and they had this beautiful concept of you said, we did. And I just thought that was brilliant. So no point getting feedback and not doing anything with it. Thank you, Julie. An environment where there's collaboration. There's a lot of talk recently about co-design, co-collaboration, and when that happens within any projects, workplaces, etc., then people have a vested interest in the outcome. They have buy-in. They want to be a part of it. They understand their role, and then ultimately getting better outcomes at the end of the day. Thank you so much, everybody.
Awesome. And Monique threw in there as well, comfort to respectfully challenge. Absolutely. That is supports growth on all levels. So thanks all of you for sharing. And you guys are all completely on the right path, because a supportive culture is characterized with an environment where employees are feeling valued, they're feeling respected and empowered to perform at their best. That prioritizes well-being and the development of these individuals, engaging them through various practices and policies, which we're going to have a look at today. In this environment, we feel a sense of belonging, and therefore employees are more motivated to contribute to the organization's success. They're more committed, they have a stronger buy-in. So what are some of the benefits of supportive work culture? Well, from the beginning, as psychologists, we're certainly most interested in the physical and mental health of the individual. So some research in the space, studies show that supportive work environments reduce stress, they decrease burnout. And listen, I treat a lot of individuals who are going through burnout. It is serious business, and it can take months, if not years, for some people to recover. So we want to do everything we can to prevent that. Lower the risk of mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. From the organizational perspective, we know that it improves engagement and retention of staff. So researchers found that highly engaged teams result in a 21% increase in profitability. That's good news for any of you working in for-profit organizations. And we tend to see a higher employee satisfaction as well, with a 25 to 65% lower turnover rate that the Hay Group were able to find in their research back in 2012. A supportive work culture also translates to better customer experience. So whether the customer is an actual customer of the organization or another version of a stakeholder within the organization, we know that companies with a high employee engagement score will result in a 10% higher customer service ratings and higher sales as well, 20% higher sales. And that's very much a return on investment for the organization. There's a few more for you. Productivity and quality. The research has found, particularly the University of Warwick found that happy employees are 12% more productive, and the companies that have strong support systems have 37% lower absenteeism, 28% less employee theft or other forms of where there is a loss of inventory, and 48% fewer safety incidents too. So that's a lot less work for the leaders, and the system functioning so much better within the organization. It is more profitable. So companies do recognize that their workplace culture in a healthy one can turn up onto things like the Fortune's 100 best companies to work for list, where individuals are wanting to work hard and they're producing and outperforming other competitors in the market. And there are cost savings too. So we know that we have reduced absenteeism that comes from a positive workplace culture, lower turnover, and fewer health issues. So of course, that's going to translate into significant cost savings. So we often talk about return on investment when we are speaking with companies that we work with. And it's really important to have a sense of understanding that can be anywhere up to a 6-to-1 return on investment for well-run employee wellness programs. So hopefully that's got you fully on board with what it is that you might be able to do in this space. So let's talk about some of the key factors that are part of supportive work culture. It does, to a large degree, begin and end with leadership. Leadership plays a really critical role in establishing and maintaining a supportive work culture and sets the tone, modeling the behaviours that define the organisational culture. So hopefully you're already doing an exceptional job in this area. So as always, when we are coaching and supporting leaders, we encourage them to have a nice, clear vision and a set of values that emphasizes the importance of a supportive work environment. So whatever level of the organization you may be within, whether it is right at the top with at the executive or board level, or right down with at the coalface, being a team leader or managing people, you have the opportunity to create a vision for your team, for those that you have influence with, and a set of values that supports everyone within that space. Getting them involved, getting your team involved can be a great activity. Leading by example, of course, showing the commitment that you have towards a positive workplace culture, meaning you really understand it and you know what the behaviors are and you're doing the behaviors that support a positive work culture. And be accountable. You know, if something is not going well or you haven't been at your best, it's okay to admit this or to work towards self-improvement. It really shows and demonstrates the psychological safety that we were talking about before. Actively listen. That's a major soft skill, one that we both often train in, how to listen and take on board your team members' feedback, their concerns, how you show your genuine interest and empathy for their concerns. To use emotional intelligence to manage one's own emotions and to be able to work with others. Again, this is a soft skill that can be taught. We can improve our emotional intelligence, allowing us to self-manage and to be able to work with others far more effectively. And the best leaders often have the higher emotional intelligence. To be able to recognize and reward, show the appreciation to the efforts that your staff make with a fair and motivating reward system. Now, some of you may be thinking, I don't have a lot of control over that, Miriam. Like, I don't know what kind of setup you have within your organization, whether it's a financial rewards or bonuses. But to be honest with you, employees don't necessarily need big gestures or financial rewards. There are lots of other ways that you can show your appreciation, even just simple thank yous, little cards, other ways that you can demonstrate that you've noticed their efforts and that you really appreciate it. It can really recharge a person. And leverage the diversity. There is so much diversity that exists out in the workforce, and there can be a lot of positives that can come from heading into that space and owning it. And support your people with their work goals, their life goals, be interested in them as a whole person. Another key factor is how we promote collaboration and teamwork. We can have many ways that we can build stronger team dynamics, and where we encourage and facilitate and provide opportunities for there to be more collaboration, this can really pay off. It fosters a sense of shared purpose, finding a way that everyone is all on board with something that they understand that they are a part of. What is the bigger picture that they are a part of and where that's meaningful for them? And so together, when they do achieve those goals, it's a wonderful sense of team celebration. It really does bring people together. There's always a place for team building activities, lots of different options out there, and can be really good fun to explore. And speaking of fun, it is so important. We must find opportunities to bring fun into the workplace, an appropriate sense of humor, lightheartedness. Maybe some of you found novel ways to do this during perhaps the COVID period when a lot of people were working remotely and we were trying to keep connected. Playing little games and doing bits and pieces like that was one way that we're able to try and keep ourselves a sense of team. Celebrate those milestones. Know what's going on for your people, and have ways that you're reminded of significant events and that you mark them in a way that people can all enjoy. Always recognize and reward people who are stepping up and supporting their colleagues, who are living these values. It's just as important as any other KPI is this, the way that the efforts are made to create that supportive work culture. Something you may not have necessarily considered before in this space, as some of these things are maybe more familiar to you, is aspects of knowledge sharing. Maybe you might have within your team or teams a spreadsheet of skills and knowledge that individuals have, where you're able to reference as time goes on, projects or other critical issues emerge. That way we can honour and respect people for what they bring beyond what perhaps might be part of their role specifications, and find opportunities to expand people, to give them insights into how other members of their team work or other critical stakeholders within the organisation. So shadowing is an interesting and wonderful way to expand one's knowledge and to build relationships. And in a similar vein, sometimes you're going to have some of those individuals in your teams who are just awesome with their soft skills. They're really personable, they're great with their communication, and they can operate as liaisons or ambassadors for types of cross-team or different department communication, giving an opportunity for more coordination and collaboration, knowledge sharing, and just making sure that there is not less silos within an organization and more collaboration. And we definitely know there is a huge value in open communication. That starts with transparency. I know that it's not always the easiest thing to be completely honest and open about what might be going on with the organization or challenges that are going on. And of course, you've got to make some professional or discerning decisions in amongst what you do communicate. However, we do generally encourage, because the research supports it, honest and open dialogue between employees and management. Now, how do we do this? Now, I'm going to throw over to Simone because I want her to share about how she does this thing called Fast Fives. Thanks, Simone.
Thanks, Miriam. So I've got a small private practice with about 6 staff members. So in order for me to connect with them, they're not always here on every day, but when I arrive in the mornings, I have a long corridor and I go from room to room and I say good morning to my staff and check in to see if they need anything specific for the day ahead, if there's any fires that I can help with putting out, or if they just need any general support. Sometimes there are no fires and they don't need support. So we just have a chat, how their weekend was or what they've got happening in their lives at the moment. And it's just a really fast and easy way to connect with your staff on a daily basis. And if there are any concerns that they may have that are coming up for them, there's an opportunity to connect with them very briefly before things maybe get bigger than Ben-Hur. And the Fast Fives can be conducted in many, many different ways, whether it be in a tea room as a bit of a huddle, or whether you've got an open plan office as well, and everyone can come together in that space. So I've also seen it work really well in industry where having an office-based executive manager, but also manages staff down in the depot level, and then for one morning a week to start at the depot so that she's connecting with her staff in that space as well. So just have a think a bit creatively about how you're connecting with your staff, not only in those regular formal one-on-one capacity, but also how you do that on an informal basis, because it's so very important in relation to promoting open communication and creating that supportive workplace culture. Thanks, Miriam.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Simone. So yeah, there are a number of ways that communication can happen, including those in which you're probably already doing at the moment. Having a sense of inclusivity and respect, that comes from having really robust policies. It also comes from having a true value for diverse perspectives, being able to foster a culture of respect and dignity for all employees, and making sure everyone understands what appropriate behaviours are, what language may need to be mindful of or is a bit sensitive. And sometimes we need to provide staff with education in order to make sure they know how to communicate in an inclusive and respectful way. So get those anti-discrimination policies and procedures nice and clear, tighten them up if they're a bit loose, and make sure you know what they are, of course, if you're working within leadership space. Having equal employment opportunities counts here, and engaging everyone's input, making sure there's respectful language and lots of thank yous, plus finding opportunities for your quieter, more introverted staff members to also be able to make their contributions where perhaps in a team meeting environment, they may be overshadowed by more extroverted staff. So giving them a bit of a heads up or following up with them after a meeting can give opportunities for that too. And just like Talia's done, if you've got questions where we get to the Q&A, we'll come back to it. So thank you so much, Talia. We'll come back to that later. Having great feedback mechanisms really count too, ways in which that you can do that and encourage and perhaps even sometimes teach people how to give feedback effectively. Honestly, it's not something that a lot of people know how to do. And unfortunately, when there's not strong skills in that area, it can cause issues, right? Can cause upset and interpersonal issues. We want to make sure people understand how to give and receive feedback well. So it could be something that can be part of team members' development. And of course, if you're going to be taking feedback, do something with it, act on it constructively and make it meaningful. Some of the ways you can do that, 360-degree feedback can be really a robust investment for an organisation to give a well-rounded perspective across different levels, above you, along the side of you and below you within your space, to give you an insight, or your team insights into how they're being perceived by others. Of course, your performance appraisals really count, and other forms of culture surveys too. And of course, we definitely encourage training and development, which we'll talk about a bit more later. A big part of a supportive work culture is the presence of empathy. So being able to cultivate empathy in both leadership and in all levels of your employee is really valuable. What is empathy? It's the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, being able to relate to them, like being able to put yourself in their shoes and imagining how they feel. Leaders themselves have the responsibility to be more flexible in communication, being able to recognize and adapt one's own communication preferences to help accommodate the team or the employee's preferred communication style. It's not something a lot of leaders initially find very comfortable, but the value in being able to talk the language or being able to relate at that person's level is paramount. It does really make a big difference. Being able to accommodate their emotional needs and just demonstrate respect for difference is really key. We always want to encourage leaders to listen actively and show compassion towards employees. Yes, compassion is teachable. It's another one of these soft skills, the communication skills that we often teach. There is a real strong importance for flexible work arrangements. If you've already got them, is there space for more? Being able to give your staff the opportunity to take care of their own needs, but also meeting their KPIs and other workload responsibilities is important, and people understand how that works. Personal leadership. Simone mentioned this right at the beginning. We often talk about personal leadership as everyone's personal responsibility in the space. Everyone is a leader of themselves. And in that way, we really want to encourage all employees to take responsibility, to use their own eyes and ears and hearts to demonstrate care for others. And at every level of the organization, there's always an opportunity for that care to be shown, and for it can make a massive difference to people who, actually really need to have a sense of being noticed and cared for. Sometimes promoting empathy building activities, such as learning different perspective taking exercises or even doing empathy development training, can be really helpful. Shifting perspectives is a core skill that psychologists teach. Being able to have that form of psychological flexibility is a huge advantage for our own emotional management, and being able to have the ability to be flexible with whatever it is that's going on in our lives. And of course, creating opportunities for employees to support each other during challenging times. If someone's going through a tough time and there's someone that they trust within the team to be able to be there for them, making sure that there is some allowance for that, within reason, of course. So now let's move on to talking about some best practices, some initiatives and practices that contribute to successful culture change. Honestly, a lot of the conversations we have mean we have to get the top down buy-in. Leaders need to buy into the value of any initiatives that support or build a healthy work culture. So sometimes that means wherever you're at, whether you're in leadership already or HR or some other capacity, we need to understand the statistics, the data behind it. What are those tangible benefits? How are they going to benefit the organization? Because sometimes the number crunchers just need to understand what the bottom line is. How does it increase productivity? What sort of value in terms of employee retention and financial performance there is? We can highlight how supportive work culture initiatives actually align with and support the organization's values. It really helps promote the organization's public persona. It can really be very positive for brand awareness and other things also within the organization, of course. It does help to meet strategic objectives because, again, happy staff are more likely to work hard and do what they can and be more committed to the organization. And it supports the long-term vision. We want to leverage relevant employee feedback, so there's always ways to improve there. Sometimes when we're trying new things, it can be a bit of a risk to make an entire organization, especially if it's a large one, engage in initiatives. So sometimes it can be really valuable to have a small scale pilot program that has a nice, clear set of success matrices and a way in which that little pilot can demonstrate some effectiveness of an initiative and that there is a tangible return on investment for those investments. And if that's the case, it's a lot easier then to have the strength and backing to then go to full scale implementation. So it might be something we're thinking about. And we want to engage leaders personally, getting them involved. How can they co-design and implement an initiative? How can they get themselves invested and responsible for the successes that they have some influence over? And please, if you are in senior management or at the executive level or have some control over the budget, we need to make sure there's a budget for this stuff to be able to promote and create supportive work cultures. Sometimes it can be valuable as well to introduce a KPI that's specifically tied to the mental health of the staff and also involved in implementing wellbeing initiatives. So it's just an idea. Naturally, our policies and practices must align to show that we're serious about our employee wellbeing. So do make sure that they are there prioritising wellbeing, that they're being actively promoted, that all levels of the organisation know about them, that there's enough effort to educate on this, and that it's supported by executives, showing real support in whatever way that is going to be effective in the communication to the staff. So this can include things like implementing flexible work arrangements to accommodate different personal needs, creating those equal employment opportunities, the career development and continuous learning opportunities that generally people value very highly, having very strong anti-bullying, anti-harassment policies that are both monitored and compliances are enforced, where we're empowering our employees more with more autonomy, with more decision-making and more involvement like that. It does help support psychological safety and decreases psychosocial hazards. And providing access to mental health resources and support services. We've mentioned EAP. Hopefully your organisation has something like an employee assistance program where people can access some counselling and support as they need. And having other forms of wellness programs and initiatives that support physical and mental health. And of course, there's a whole range of things that could come under that umbrella. Again, we're giving you a bit of a high-level overview. Get the questions in there. And of course, if you want us to talk more about any of this stuff in a future webinar, just let us know. We're very happy to accommodate. Get that learning and development going. Sometimes we have to do a skills and knowledge gap assessment. What's kind of missing in the space, whether it's a collective gap or it's more individual, and then choose to invest in targeted quality training programs to meet those needs. Ensure that there is some form of key metrics there to measure the success of those programs. We know through years of experience that All employees benefit from communication skills training. Learning how to be more resilient. It's been around a while. It's been a big part of conversation of how do we build up resilience. It really still matters. Making sure that people are aware from a mental health perspective what to look out for in themselves and others and what can be done if some warning signs emerge, and promoting any other aspect of personal leadership and accountability. Leaders, of course, benefit from all of that. And how to support employees' mental health, how to be empathetic, what emotional intelligence is and how to build it, how to manage their own stress. Oh my goodness, why is this still so hard for a lot of leaders to do well? Bless you, I know you're working hard, but there's always probably ways in which we could manage our stress better, and people like Simone and I are here to help. And how to run effective meetings. No one likes an inefficient meeting. We want to make sure our meetings are run really, really well, that they're effective and meeting the time requirements that people are investing in. And mentoring and executive coaching can also be fantastic for leaders and for whatever professional and personal needs there too. So there's heaps of options for ways in which we can support staff, help ourselves, help our team. Just very quickly, we're going to have a look at a little case study. This one comes from Google. So you may or may not be aware of a comprehensive wellness program that Google implemented a few years back. And they were really wanting to focus on enhancing employment well-being. They wanted to have, and they were able to invest in, how lovely, on-site fitness centres, mental health resources, flexible working arrangements, and even able to be providing nutritious food options to their staff. What was really interesting in these initiatives led to a significant improvement in employee satisfaction in terms of productivity and reduced turnover rates too. The surveys that they did indicated a 15% increase in productivity and a 25% decrease in voluntary departures, so much better with retention. The supportive environment also bolstered Google's recruitment appeal, and it really truly does. Like, there is a reputation that organizations get one way or another around their work culture. So as a result, they had higher job applications and fostered a more collaborative and innovative workplace. We know that this case study just demonstrates that there are substantial benefits to making these investments in employee well-being and creating that supportive work culture. All right, that's enough of the content. I hope you've got something out of it. I'm going to let Simone introduce what other webinars we've got coming up. Thanks, Simone.
Thank you, Miriam. Jam-packed information. Hopefully the light bulb moments have gone off and you've got some little gems there that you can take away. So we have 4 more additional webinars that are coming up over the consecutive months. It's the second Wednesday of each month all the way through to November. So coming up in August, the 14th, we're going to be talking about how to implement mental health initiatives within your organisation. So just looking at guidelines and tools for developing and implementing these that would be tailored to your specific organisation. Then in September, we're going to be looking at workload and stress management. As Miriam said, we can all do some work personally in this space. So what are some of those strategies and tools to manage workload and to look at that personal accountability in relation to stress management so that we can be more productive in the workplace and the best version of ourselves, both at work and at home. Then webinar 5, we're going to be looking at enhancing employee engagement and productivity. So how we can do that to contribute to positive work culture and organisational success. Then finally, on November the 13th, we're going to be talking about mentally healthy workplaces. So what are some of those sustainable initiatives that can promote employee wellbeing to ultimately create a mentally healthy workplace for your organisation? And as Miriam said at the outset, we record all of our webinars. So if you do miss one, then you can, if you're unable to attend in person, you'll be able to see that after. So we would love for you to get in touch with us. So after today's webinar, we will send you through an email with the webinar and also with the recording. And if you want to jump on and register for some of our upcoming webinars, please feel free to do that. Please feel free to share with your networks as well. The more the merrier. Our fundamental goal is to have that butterfly effect. The more lives, the more organisations that we can impact and to in turn create mentally healthy workplaces, then that just makes our heart sing. It also makes your jobs a lot easier as well. So, in the spirit of reciprocity, in exchange for the information and insights that you've received today, we would love for you to give us some feedback. So you can scan this QR code now, or that will also come through in your email later. So now we've got some time for Q&A. So we already had a question that had popped up in there from Talia, which was, when you've got a large warehouse, how can you do some of those fast fives? So my initial thoughts, Talia, in that space would be, I'm imagining it's a huge warehouse like a factory or something like that. Potentially the leader could, whether there are sort of lanes or aisles or sections within the warehouse, one day of the week they focus on that and they just rotate through. Another idea would be potentially there might be a lunchroom or a tea room for the staff members as well, and there might be rotational shifts too. So maybe they could come into the tea room and sit and have lunch with the staff as another way of connecting with them. I always find, particularly with blue collar workers, food makes them very happy, and often when meeting them in that environment, they're relaxed and more receptive to engaging with the leader. So that would be my initial thoughts. Miriam, anything else to add?
Look, those are all awesome, Simone. I completely agree with that. My thought was, if you've got a large team, you probably have a few individuals within that large team who are natural leaders in their own right, or rapport leaders. They're the kind of individuals that people go to, feel very warm towards. If you identify them, you can have them step up and be able to do a little bit of wellbeing check-ins and so on within that, the communities or the network that they have direct influence over. So sometimes spread the love, yeah, through these people too.
Brilliant. Any other questions? Thanks, Tanya. Can't see if people are madly typing. We'll just wait a few more minutes.
Well, we're just waiting for any other questions to come through. We would really, truly appreciate your feedback. When you get the email after today's webinar, there will be the link again for the feedback. Just gives us a chance to either feel pretty good about what we're doing and also to find ways to improve on. And you can certainly give us ideas about what else you might like us to explore in future sessions. We're definitely here in service. We want to be able to provide opportunities for connection, learning, knowledge sharing. So yeah, please help us out too. Oh, Talia's got one.
Another question from Talia. Are there any questions that are great to ask leaders, executives to gauge their vision for psychological health and wellbeing in their organisations? It's a really good question. Let me ponder on that. To gauge their vision for psychological health and wellbeing in their organisations. Potentially a good starting point might be in relation to the codes of practice regarding psychological safety. So that's now statewide. And to ask the leaders, what's our strategy? What's our vision? What's our plan in relation to managing psychosocial hazards within the workplace? And then underneath that would be psychological health and wellbeing. So I would be coming at from potentially a legislative perspective. I know that sounds like a big stick, but executives respond to big sticks. So so I'd probably go in on that level. Miriam, anything else that you would add?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure if I had a little more time, I could brainstorm some excellent questions in really, really good language to be able to get there. But I think it is, what is their interests, what are their pain points, and being able to press your questions into that so that you have their buy-in. And also being able to communicate your own. There's nothing like sort of showing your own leadership about what you see as the vision in your space, and what you're doing about that, and then asking people what they're doing in theirs. So there's more than one way of doing it.
We've got another question there from Elizabeth. So what tips would you suggest if a leader wants to reset with their teams? So off the cuff, one thing I can think of is a 360. So doing a 360-degree feedback process allows a leader to get feedback from their subordinates, from their peers, and from their manager or their executive. So that is both qualitative and quantitative feedback. Usually there's, in whatever tool is used in that space, it's evidence-based in terms of looking at potential psychosocial hazards from a leadership perspective. So am I a supportive leader? Am I available to staff members, et cetera, et cetera? And then the qualitative options allow staff to provide additional input in that space. Then once that feedback is received, then engaging with staff about what feedback they've given to you. So you said, I did. That's a formal process that you could look at in terms of resetting. If you're wanting something more informal, you could meet with your team members one-on-one. And I like to ask my staff, is there anything that I can be doing differently to support you better? And I think it's a really beautiful question that's non-confrontational, and that support could be work-related or it could be personal related. And it just gives that open-ended opportunity for the staff member to give you some feedback to say, no, actually all good, or you know what, yes, I'd like to meet with you more regularly, or I'd like more time with you, or can you give me more clarity on this? That's my initial thoughts. Miriam, anything else to add in our last closing seconds?
Absolutely. That was some jam-packed awesomeness there, Simone. So thank you so much for sharing that. My thought initially on that one, Liz, was around the way in which I often coach leaders on how to firstly recognize, okay, something's not quite cool in the dynamic here. Maybe we need to reset in order to get a clean slate to be able to work from, or something that at least is involving everybody in the process of redefining the team. So sometimes having a team day or a team retreat for a couple of days to give the opportunity for, firstly, sort of bringing the elephant in the room out in the open. All right, some things haven't been so great. I've not been so great. I often encourage the authenticity and acknowledging the leader's own challenges and mistakes in the space and owning them and showing what you're doing to repair that. It honestly, there's nothing more that brings down barriers for people than seeing their leader have some vulnerability and using that as a teachable moment. Then being able to work towards what's our united vision, what are our values, what are our team norms that we all want to make sure that we have, that we uphold, that's going to show that everyone's valued and what we're contributing to. Getting everyone's buy-in and involvement really, really matters. And again, setting up metrics or setting up some other forms of accountability for making that become real, and give it time. These things take some time. Culture change takes time. We can't expect everything to quickly be resolved. Let there be time and nurture. That's my answer.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Apologies for going over for an additional minute. We hope that you've gained some insights, some additional food for thought, some brain food, so to speak. Please, we do value your feedback, and we'd love to see you again at our upcoming webinars as well. Have a beautiful afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we look forward to crossing paths again soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mon. Thanks, Julie. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Rashada.